Last summer, my brother and I took an amazing 7-week-long trip to Europe. While 3 of those weeks were devoted to hiking and sightseeing in Switzerland, the other 4 were specifically meant to ride as many roller coasters as we could. On that trip, we rode some of the best roller coasters in the world, including a new all-time favorite of mine called the Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland in Belgium. This year, I'm excited to announce that I'll be returning back to Europe with a good friend of mine, Josiah from National Coasters. This trip will be focused on some countries we didn't get around to last time, or countries that we only briefly experienced. I'd highly recommend checking out my 20,000 subscriber special trip announcement video for more information on all the parks we'll be visiting. In short, the countries we'll be focusing on this trip are Spain, France, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. So with that being said, I thought it would be fun to rank the top 15 coasters I'm most looking forward to, as I did last year before our first trip to Europe. Before we get started, I'd like to establish 2 things. The first being that this isn't a list of how I suspect these rides will rank based off of just quality. This is a list displaying my excitement and anticipation before riding these coasters. Also, I did want to give a quick honorable mention to Junker at Powerland in Finland. Between the 2 parks we ultimately had to exclude from our itinerary, those being Powerland and Sarkaniemi, Junker was my most anticipated coaster. The ride looks like a launched version of Monster at Adventureland, which is one of my favorite roller coasters manufactured by Gerstlauer. I suspect that Junker would have easily placed in the top 10 on this list and would have been my second most anticipated coaster in Finland. So now that we have that out of the way, let's dive in. Number 15, Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain at Disneyland Paris. Of all the attractions I'll be riding at the Disneyland Paris Resort, I do think this one is the most different compared to any Disney coaster I've experienced. Do I suspect it to be the best coaster in the park? Probably not. I'd imagine that honor will go to what is widely considered the best Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. But in terms of what attraction I'm more intrigued by, Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain easily takes the cake. This is a Vekoma launch coaster with a super unique upwards electric winch launch. This leads into an in-the-dark blitz of 3 inversions and various bank turns. It's more intense than the average Disney coaster, and the off-ride appearance of this ride destroys any other Space Mountain out there. Regardless of how it rides, I'm really looking forward to it just for being such an unordinary Disney ride. Number 14, Balder at Liseberg in Sweden. I think I'm doing myself a favor by keeping my expectations for this ride low. Balder is an Intamin prefabricated wooden coaster, and by far the smallest one at that. The reason I don't have the highest hopes for this ride is because I was severely disappointed by Colossus at Heide Park in Germany. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of dead spots on this one, as the layout consists of bunny hill after bunny hill, but that leads to a whole other issue, which is a repetitive sequence of elements. If they hit hard like on Steel Vengeance, I can look past that, but I'm unsure if each of Balder's hills will really deliver. So that's why I'm quite fascinated to ride this coaster despite not having the highest of expectations. Number 13, Abismo at Parque de Atracciones in Spain. This is the first coaster on this list that I can confidently go into knowing that I'll really like it. Abismo is one of the few Mauer Skyloop coasters that exist around the world, and the second I'll have ever experienced. The first one was Skywheel at Skyline Park in Germany, and I had a blast with it. What makes Abismo different is despite it not going around the layout twice like Skywheel, it's the only one of these with an extended ride course. It would appear that the ride will give a few good moments of airtime, but even if the extension sucks, which I don't think it will, I know I can count on the first half to deliver a fun but freaky ride experience. Number 12, Furious Baco at Portaventura in Spain. Intamin's only true wing coaster they ever built happens to be an extremely unique one. The ride starts with a hydraulic launch, blasting riders from 0 to 83.9 miles per hour in 3.5 seconds. This launch appears to be very fast and exhilarating, and I know I'll absolutely love it. It's what comes after that I'm most curious about. This is probably one of the most divisive coasters out there, since there's a whole group of people that love it and a whole group of people who hate it for being a rough and short ride. I'm curious as to whether or not these 2 things will bother me and what kind of forces the ride will pack in after the launch. If I had to guess, I think I'll end up being a big fan of Furious Baco, but there's no way of really knowing for sure. Number 11, Osiris at Parc Asterix in France. Osiris is a ride I keep hearing is one of the best B&M inverts out there. B&M inverts are already one of my favorite coaster models ever, and if what I hear about this ride is true, I can assure you it'll rank quite high for me. And for the record, if this list were ranked based off of how good I think each of these rides will be, Osiris would rank a lot higher. But since I've done just about every B&M invert in America, I have a sense of how this coaster will feel. But also, to be fair, it looks quite unique relative to its sister rides because it's not particularly big at only 131 feet, but dives through trenches at various points throughout the layout. I absolutely can't wait to ride Osiris, but it ranks just outside the top 10 for rides I'm most anticipating. Number 10, Storm the Dragon Legend at Tusenfryd in Norway. Gerstlauer's first inverted thrill coaster, as well as their first inverted launch coaster, is sure to be a very unique ride. I have no idea how Storm will actually feel, but that adds a whole new level of interest for me. What holds it back is its short track length of 1,800 feet, but it does have that swing launch extending the ride time more than it would be otherwise. Overall, I think this ride has a lot of potential to be the park's best coaster, but it all depends on a variety of factors, including forces on the launch and the rest of the ride, as well as smoothness. Number 9, Tonnerre to Zeus at Parc Asterix in France. This is a ride that would have ranked a whole lot lower before 2022 came around. It used to go by the name of Tonnerre de Zeus, and it was a CCI wooden roller coaster that apparently started to get quite rough. So Parc Asterix was able to get the Gravity Group to work their magic on this ride, giving it a new name, Tonnerre to Zeus, as well as new trains and new sections of track. The reason this ranks so high isn't just because because it appears to be a smooth CCI layout now, but also because its back rows flipped around backwards. I've never been on a wooden roller coaster backwards, so I think something this different will really throw me for a loop. Number 8, Speed Monster at Tusenfryd in Norway. Frankly, I don't think this is a coaster that should rank as high as it does, especially if we're even remotely considering the quality of the attraction. I think several coasters below this have the potential to rank higher, but for some reason, Speed Monster has always appeared to be such a fun coaster to me. The ride is an intimate accelerator coaster, which is one of my favorite ride models ever, and it's got a much more complete layout than many of the others. After a 53-mile-per-hour launch, Speed Monster throws you into the original Norwegian loop, as well as a corkscrew and 2 zippy twisted airtime hills. How much I like this ride will probably come down to the forces, especially in the latter half. Number 7, Helix, at Liseberg in Sweden. Like Balder in the same park, my expectations for Helix have always been lower than most, just in case I don't end up loving it as much as some others. I definitely think the layout looks fantastic with its 7 inversions and plethora of airtime moments, but I do worry about how the 2 launches could take away a lot from the pacing of the ride. But I'll tell you what does make up for that is the soundtrack. Number 6, Red Force at Ferrariland in Spain. It's actually surprising I have this so low considering my love for Top Thrill Dragster and King Naka. By far the next closest ride to those is Red Force, with the only main differences being its use of LSMs instead of hydraulics and its height being reduced to 367 feet. But if you look at this thing from certain angles, it looks just as tall as its strata cousins. I can't wait to experience a launch over 100 miles per hour again, along with the top hat this freaking massive. Plus, it'll just be really cool to be able to say I've ridden the tallest and fastest coaster in Europe. Number 5, Shambhala at Portaventura in Spain. This coaster is considered by many to be the best B&M hypercoaster ever built. Now, I'm going in with the unique outlook that Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia far and away crushes every other B&M hyper I've ridden so far. So part of my excitement with this ride is knowing how it'll compare to Goliath for me. Will it be weaker than most people make it out to be, as I feel with Mako at SeaWorld Orlando, or will it surpass Goliath as my favorite B&M hyper? I could honestly see it either way, but let me get one thing clear, I'm sure I'll absolutely love this coaster. Number 4, Wildfire at Kolmarden in Sweden. If you didn't see this one coming, you've been living under a rock. Wildfire is the only RMC I'll be riding this trip, and my last of the 3 currently operating in Europe. What I find so cool about Wildfire is how different it is from the other 2 RMCs on the continent. Untamed is a mini steel vengeance with its non-stop series of airtime, and Zadra is a monster speed machine with so much variety. Wildfire, on the other hand, is a much more conventional layout to other RMCs in my opinion, with an added twist. It's a wooden roller coaster. RMC only ever built 4 topper track coasters, and with Lightning Rod having been RMC'd itself, there's now really only 3. So it'll be interesting to see how this compares to Outlaw Run and Goliath at Six Flags Great America when I get on that thing next month. By the way, prepare yourself for a trio of intimates. There's a reason they're my favorite manufacturer. Number 3, Toutatis at Parc Asterix in France. If I hadn't already been on Pantheon, I think Toutatis would be a little higher and maybe number 1 on my list. Not that Pantheon was underwhelming, matter of fact, it's exactly the opposite. Never get my words twisted, I think Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg is one of the most underrated roller coasters in the world right now. But when Toutatis was announced and throughout its construction process, everyone was saying it was going to be Pantheon on steroids. Well, spoiler alert, and I haven't even been on it yet, but it's not. It has the theming on its side, which is great, but the layout looks pretty much equal to Pantheon. Again, that's absolutely not a bad thing. Pantheon ranks inside my top 20. But since I already know what to expect as far as the shuttle launch with the airtime hill, and the rest of the ride was maybe a little bit weaker than everyone expected, Toutatis ranks at a solid number 3 spot. Number 2, Taiga at Linnanmäki in Finland. I went back and forth between this and the number 1 coaster multiple times before finally making a decision. Guys, I am so excited for Taiga. Intamin's multi-launch coaster model might as well be the greatest coaster model of all time, and Taiga looks like one of the best of its genre. It has an incredible mix of elements with the brilliant use of the terrain and looks to be exactly what I expect from a world-class Intamin coaster. Obviously, I could be wrong when I say this, but I'd be shocked if this didn't rank inside my top 15 after this trip. I even think it has the potential to be my favorite roller coaster we ride this trip, but I nevertheless want to give the top spot to a new coaster that just opened in Spain, and that's number 1, Batman Gotham City Escape at Park Warner Madrid. This ride communicates why us enthusiasts should never underestimate Intamin. When this thing were being built, we were thinking it could rival Velocicoaster at Universal Orlando with its reminiscent looking top hat and amazing looking layout. Then testing footage came along and I think a lot of us were underwhelmed. But now we're hearing reviews for the first time and apparently this ride's amazing. This reminds me exactly of what happened with Velocicoaster, and if you've ridden that ride, you know just how amazing it is. Batman Gotham City Escape is the long-awaited standout coaster this park's needed, and it looks like it'll deliver with its 3 launches, 4 inversions, several moments of airtime, and incredible theming. I cannot wait to ride this and everything else on this list, and I can't wait for you guys to join me on my vlog series so you are able to see my first reactions to all these rides. It should be a great time, so if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the videos. It only takes a few seconds and it really does help us out. Also, feel free to comment down below letting me know which of these rides you'd be the most excited for and what you think my favorite of the trip will be. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.